It has been a hot damn minute since I have checked in on the Young Thug case. And when I last left off, I said, you know what, this thing is just a crazy three-ring circus. And I went back and looked at some stuff today, and it's next level now. It's, the trapeze has collapsed, the elephants are on fire, they're running around stampeding on little children eating Cracker Jacks. Like, it's a fucking dumpster fire. And I don't know why it hasn't been declared a mistrial yet. There have been so many motions for mistrial and disqualifying prosecutors and all of this other stuff. So it's time I got back into it, and wow, did I miss a lot. When I left off, Judge Whitaker had just been assigned the case. Now, for those of you who don't know, this case has been going on now for 100 days. It took 10 months to seat a jury. It is a case here in Atlanta where they're accusing Young Thug, who is a rapper, of leading like this big violent street gang. And there's this rival gang, and there's all this violence and drugs and all of this stuff. Judge Whitaker is actually technically the fourth judge, because the original judge there were motions for him to recuse. He refused to. Another judge was brought in. She listened to those motions. She made him recuse. Then it got assigned to this third judge. This third judge recused herself because of a connection, and now we're at Judge Whitaker. And really, honestly, I think she's doing the best she can. She was given just a big pile of steaming dog poop, and what do you do? She's really trying to piece it back together, but it's a mess. She ruled on a couple of motions, so they kicked the jury out of the room for 2 weeks. They did some motions. She said no to the gag order. The prosecution wants the defense under a gag order, so they can't go out and talk to the press. No dice. She also said that there is going to be no reconsideration for bond. So Young Thug and his co-defendants were never given bond, so they have been in prison this entire time, all during the trial, all leading up to the trial. And so they did file to try and get bond again, and nope, she said no. There have been a number of motions, again, for mistrial. One of them was because there was a discovery of a second ex parte conversation that took place, oddly enough, 3 days before the prior ex parte conversation. And that's what set this whole thing upside down. That is when the wheels came off the wagon. It was a messy, messy thing. Well, it turns out there was two of them. So that's a big mess. In my opinion, that probably was enough to call a mistrial. There have been some big time discovery concerns. The prosecution isn't turning over the evidence the way they should in a timely manner to the defense. They're arguing that the defense isn't turning over their stuff, but they don't have to. By Georgia state law, you don't have to turn over anything that you find out on a prosecution's witness if you're the defense team, only your own witnesses. So she keeps going in there. This is Prosecutor Love. She keeps going in there and saying, well, it's not just us, it's them, but it's not them. In fact, Judge Whitaker had to do one of those second rope, smackdowns on them and say, enough, I've had enough. She actually said, you got to get all your ducks in a row, and you got to get this evidence taken care of, because I'm not messing around. In fact, the judge is making the entire Fulton County prosecution team, so everybody who's involved in this trial, has to go through retraining on the Brady rule. And the judge is saying the court will administer the training. They're going to give you the video, and then you're going to watch the video under the court's direction. So they're all having to be basically retrained on one of the most basic fundamental pieces of prosecutorial law. But you know what? The big hit is that they brought back Lil Woody. Kenneth Copeland came back to testify again. If you don't remember, he was the one that kind of panicked at the last minute. He had said he would testify, then he tried to plead the fifth, then they got him an ex parte conversation and probably bullied him into testifying. So now he's here. He does not want to go back to jail, so he is willing to testify. And he's supposed to be a prosecution witness, but I got to tell you, I don't think it's working out well for the prosecution, because I think he's supposed to be called in to sort of snitch on Young Thug and say that Young Thug is the leader of YSL and everything we all did was because he directed us. And Woody's doing kind of the exact opposite. He says, there is no beef between YSL and If Gang. He's like, I don't know what you're talking about. There's no beef between them. We all kind of assume there's a beef. There's been a lot of shootouts back and forth. But Woody is saying on the stand, there's no beef between the two gangs. The prosecution tried to get him to admit that this beef started with a shootout at a gambling house. And he's like, no, the beef really started when Threat and I rolled up on Rich Homie Kwan's daddy's barbershop. And that was apparently brand new information that no one had ever heard before. And you knew something good was coming, because he turned to the judge and he said, are you sure I can't get in trouble for anything I say? And she says, nope, go ahead and say it. And he's like, oh yeah, we shot up that barbershop. So apparently, Woody and Threat went and shot, to send a warning, went and shot up the barbershop of the daddy of Rich Homie Quan, who Threat and Rich Homie Quan were having beef. And I love this because when she asks Woody, well, why did you go? Like, what did he tell you? And he says, nothing. I didn't ask. He says, let's go. We go. Reminded me of that scene in The Town where Ben Affleck and Jeremy Renner are talking, and Jeremy Renner's like, whose car are we going to take? That was full Woody on the stand. It was ride or die. I loved it. Now, he also says that was before the shooting of Donovan Thomas, because the state has always attested that the shooting of Donovan, who also goes by Nut, his nickname's Peanut, who was a very, very high-ranking member of the Bloods, which is related to the If Gang, that the killing of him was what started this whole big beef. But here's Woody saying, oh no, we shut up that barbershop because those two had beef. This wasn't between YSL and If Gang. And I think the part that even I don't follow it that closely, but there's one thing I know. One of the charges against Young Thug, and it's related to RICO, because they're trying to figure out how money changes hands, how the money relates to the crimes. And one of the charges where they've sort of danced it back to RICO is that Young Thug supposedly rented a car, an Infiniti, from the Atlanta airport, whatever rental car agency, and that was the car that was used in the shooting of Peanut, or I'm sorry, Donovan Thomas. And that's how they tied it back, that Young Thug is the leader. He rented this car. He sent his guys to go get Donovan Thomas. But Woody's up on the stand, and Woody goes, no, I went with him to rent the car. I drove around in the car for a little while. I wrecked it, and then I loaned it to Threat, and I don't know what happened after that. So it sounds like Woody is really trying hard. He's the prosecution's witness. He's supposed to be coming out and snitching on Young Thug. But everything I get is that he's saying, no, Thug wasn't involved. We went to get the rental car, but then I took the rental car and then I gave it to Threat. So it's slowly unraveling for the prosecution, at least from my vantage point. And it's not looking good. So this is getting to be really interesting. I'm going to have to get back into it, but you know who you should go follow? You should go follow. Her name is I'm Not a Lawyer, But, and she's fantastic. And she's been doing all of this day by day by day by day. And she's brilliant. And she explains it in a way that, like, she kind of dumbs it down for like an old white lady like me, because I'm not really into Atlanta's rap culture. So there's a lot of this that kind of escapes me. But she also showed recently a slideshow that was pretty impressive. It's what the police put together as far as how they, all the timelines of all the crimes. And she walks through that and kind of tells you who everybody is. And it's pretty helpful. So if you want to learn more about that case, that's where you go. Stay tuned.